Yo, what is good, guys? Welcome back to another video. We have an insane week for the stock market. We got earnings, we got some news coming out over the weekend, and SPY is almost at those lows once again that we seen it at a couple days ago. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. But with that being said, let's get started. I'm gonna start on the SPY levels, okay? Because the thing about it is that if the SPY breaks below that 520, right now we're green. We're gonna show you guys on the 5 minute candle a little bit how it's moving, but we did kind of break below that 520, I think 519 something. But we're going to need to see SPY break past the 520 with a lot of volume, a lot of momentum. If we break below that, we can either see one or two things happen, right? So one thing is that we can either bounce off that 515, that 510, and or that 505 level. So keep those levels on your mind and on your radar. 513.8, 515, 572.9, and that 520 level is going to be key. Little levels of your day trading, but some big levels is going to be that 520, 515, and 510. I'm repeating it just so you guys know, okay? But if we can either do that and or you can see it break below that $500 level, because we did see some big days where SPY dropped a bunch, and that could be another Black Monday. With that being said, keep those levels on your mind and on your radar. If we fall below that 500 level, we could probably see it all the way down to the low 490s and or even break below that 490 today and or middle of the week. But to the upside, look at 522.2, 523.5, 526.5, 529.79, and 531.63. But with that being said, before we get into the 5 minute chart, let's talk about some news, because there is some news that can move the overall market. First off is earnings. It isn't really major news, but just keep in mind earnings. You guys can screenshot this if you guys want. Let me zoom out a little bit. If I can, it's not letting me zoom. Okay, it's not letting me zoom out. But mainly what I'm looking at is Tuesday, we have Tesla and Verizon. On Wednesday, we have Boeing and Chipotle and IBM. There are going to be some interesting ones. Monday today, we got some other banks too, if you guys are interested. On Thursday, we have Intel. I'm interested in Intel, especially with the new CEO and what they're doing. Google, Alphabet, American Airlines, and some other ones. And then Friday, not really anything major, but that is earnings. We're gonna get to the calendar a little bit later. But so basically, some news that has been happening over the weekend. And honestly, to say we haven't really got any good news. Like last weekend, we kind of got the good news with Apple, of course, you guys know, and maybe a little bit with the chips, but then Trump kind of took that back. But this week, we have Trump firing Jerome. Okay. And basically, I made a video. If you guys are interested, you guys can watch that. But in short, basically, firing Jerome the not right way, basically with no reason, can show that the Fed isn't really as like by themselves to say that as people thought they were. And with that being said, the markets can dip even more. Seeing that, so it can bring a lot more uncertainty in the market. We have gold soaring, but the trade war is basically going up. So if you guys want some safe stocks, I do recommend looking at some gold ETFs and just gold overall. If you guys want to play some option plays, futures, anything like that, gold is rallying and just making new highs by the week, honestly. So gold is a great one to look at. But with that being said, like I said before, the threats is bringing stock futures and dollar down. Banks are selling dollars and just everything is going down. So that's why I'm saying look at SPY in a bearish way. Sorry, bearish. I almost said bullish. But yeah, so some events that's happening today. We mainly just have economic indicators that might move the market, might not. So keep that in mind for today. But with that being said, for the SPY, look at it in a 5 minute time frame. We have been kind of bouncing up and down with the pre-market so far. Has been looking okay, but we did bounce below that 520, like I said, 519.25. So if we can maybe open up, you might even see it open up. You might see it green and or red. Honestly, I recommend being very, very patient for today, because we are kind of in a low zone right now. Because honestly, if we somehow get good news and or if the market just naturally goes up, we might even see it back up at that 530 to that 540 level. So don't play puts right away. But if we start seeing the market drop, you might even get your 10 to 20% gain. I personally go for 10% gains when I trade. I trade options. I go for 10%, sell at 10%. It's the safest way, 100% win rate. But normally I wait a little bit. Like last week, I played it depending on which direction it went. Like yesterday, I let it go up a little bit, played a little put option, made my 10% easily. But today is going to be a little bit harder because you might see a drop. And then you might even see it drop down, maybe even to that 220. And you might think that it's going down and it might bounce off that 220 and start going up. and or bounce down to like that or sorry, I said two, but 515 and or that 517, and it might bounce up too. So just keep these markers on your radar, and or we might see like a very big drop. And you might see it just keep on dropping throughout the whole day, all the way down to that 510 to that 500 level, especially with this uncertainty. So we do have a lot of uncertainty in the market. News and stuff like that makes the market look bearish, and the market on the charts, sorry, is looking bearish too. But just honestly, just see how the market opens. We have an hour before the market opens. I'm going to try to upload this video maybe 30 minutes before, just so you guys like basically can watch it. So I do recommend keeping these levels and news on your radar. Another stock that I'm personally looking at is Apple, because Apple has been dropping with the bad news. Basically, tariffs in China is just making it worse. But they kind of got a little bit of a relief last week, but we kind of seen it rally up a little bit and then come back down. Basically went up to that 212 and then all the way back down. They do got some cheap calls that you guys can play. And especially if we get some good news with China and US, you can see the stock maybe even bounce back up to that 210 level and make a decent amount of money off those cheap call options. But I do recommend being patient. I mentioned that in my last video too. But unlike SPY, we did bounce below, and we're kind of maintaining below the lows that we had a few days ago. So keep Apple bearish on your radar for now. Look at that 190, 188, 185, and that 180 level to the downside. But if we do start coming back, especially with the SPY, you see SPY green, Apple green, you're going to see Apple probably rally up to that 194.5, 196, and that 200 level, and maybe even that 202.10. So keep Apple on your radar, up or down. NVIDIA, I really want to see how it reacts to that $100 level. We might see a little bounce back up, and we might see it bounce lower and maybe make that 95 to 92 level and that 90 level to the downside. This is another one that has some cheap call options, especially if you see Apple all the way down, back down to like the low nines to the high eights. We've seen it bounce down to that 86 and go all the way back up to like 105 the next day. So NVIDIA is a decent one to make a decent amount of money, but we do need good news for the stock to basically bounce. A lot of stocks are just dropping pre-market with the bad news and everything like that. So for Tesla, look at 230, 225, and that 220 level, and that 218.9, and then to the upside, look at that 235, 240, and 241.5, and then that 250 level back up. But honestly, I don't think we have enough momentum unless we get some good news with just overall tariffs and stuff like that. It's still dragging the market down. Amazon, look at that 171.5, 173, and 174.3 level to the downside. Look at 168.5, 165, and 160. We do have Google earnings, so it can be like very volatile, especially Tesla too. Tesla, we got earnings tomorrow, so it might be more volatile today. But look at Google to the downside, 150.9, 150, 149.5, 148.5, 145. This stock kind of moves slow, but I mean, we kind of seen a big sell off yesterday or Friday, sorry. To upside 152, 153, 154.5, now 155.5 for Google. Bitcoin is looking okay. We are getting decent news with Bitcoin saying to kind of like telling banks and stuff like that to buy it, and just firms to buy Bitcoin. People are kind of telling people to load up, showing that it's going to be a great safe haven, basically. But with that being said, with Bitcoin, look at stocks like MSTR, Coinbase, IBIT. You can play decent option plays. For MSTR, we did see a big boost up. But if we do see selling pressure in Bitcoin, you can see MSTR go down. So look at that 320, 313.7, 310, and 305, and 300. To the upside, if Bitcoin keeps rallying, we get that 90K that everybody's kind of looking at. Look at that 334, 340, 345, and 350. Stocks aren't looking too bad. I think we might have a little bit of a sell day, another Black Monday, of course. But, you know, things can always change. We might get good news today. I highly doubt that. But please wait a little bit, maybe 5, 10, 20 minutes after market opens before you make your first trade, just to see how everything's looking, see how news and everything like that prints. And yeah, man, let me know how much you guys made, some stocks you guys are looking at, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.